Can't see the clock.
You got one minute, 1 minute.
1 minute, okay. Morning. Welcome to the Land Use and Information Committee meeting of August 3rd, 2021. I'll call the meeting to order. First on the agenda is notice has been posted in accordance with Wisconsin Statute 19.84 Open Meeting Law. This time we will have general public comment. There's 3-minute time limit per person. First on the list is David Klopp.
My name?
David Klopp.
Thank you, Commissioners. Appreciate giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. I live in Luck, Wisconsin. I really think that with the COVID, everybody's been pinned up. I think the tourism business up here is going to explode. I mean, you see what's going to lake properties, and everybody's trying to get to the North Woods. Doggone it, you got the prettiest place in the world up here. It's gorgeous. It really is. I just wanted to come up and say this is a bad idea for tourism. Hog factories and tourists don't. They really don't. And I don't think you've really realized what the full potential of how gorgeous your area is. I mean, in the water, they got nothing like this in the world. This is the most pristine waters in the world. And these Chinese factories, we're getting all the shit, and they're getting the meat, and they're laughing at us. They got African swine flu going rampant all over the world. Epidemics, every country except ours. And don't think it's not coming here, because it will. It will. And where did that COVID come from? A lot of people think that it came from these type of factories. There's strong evidence. So there's no rush to this. You know, you don't have to do this decision today. So I would urge you to stand back and don't vote on this zoning change today. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Krause.
Didn't know where it was appropriate to speak, but I wanted to defer my comments to items 7 and 8 because there wasn't an option to put in for 7 on the.
Thank you, Mark. Maria Erickson.
Good morning. I'm like Mark. I'm wishing to speak on agenda item number 7. So.
Thank you, Maria. Next on the agenda, approval of the agenda order.
Well, we've got other people that want to speak that signed up.
Not under general comments, they didn't.
Okay, fine.
You're signed up to speak when the public hearing comes up for the text amendment. So when the text amendment comes up, you are signed up to speak. So when the public hearing starts, you will speak at that point.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for clarifying. Yep. Okay.
Approval of the agenda order.
Move to approve.
Motion by Supervisor Anderson.
Second.
Second by Supervisor Pearson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Approval of the minutes from the July 6, 2021 meeting.
Second.
Okay, this motion,
Hayden and.
John Roy, and
No,
oh,
Supervisor Payton and Supervisor Blum.
got it. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next, we'll have the public hearing. Will Jason please read the notice on public hearing?
Notice of public hearing, State of Wisconsin, County of Burnett, Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021, at 9 a.m. at the Burnett County Government Center, Room 165, Town of Menan, Cyron, Wisconsin, regarding the following Burnett County Land Use Shoreline Protection Ordinances. Number 1, conditional use permit CUP 2119, Boardwalk MHC LLC. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the Town of Oakland, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that John Bohm, on behalf of Boardwalk MHC LLC, has made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to increase the size of the manufactured home community from 31 sites to 32 sites next to 28284 Wildwood Lane in the RR3 zoning district in the west quarter of the west half of the northwest quarter, section 20, town 40 north, range 16 west. Number 2, conditional use permit CUP 2120 Bauer. Public notice hereby given to all persons in the town of Sand Lake, Burnett County, Wisconsin, that Neil Bauer has made application for a conditional use permit for the terms of the Burnett County Land Use and Shoreline Protection Code of Ordinances to allow a camper year-round for up to 3 years located on Owl Lake at 24873 Viola Lake Road in the RR2 zoning district, lot 2, CSM, volume 21, page 60, section 31, town 39 north, range 15 west. Number 3, map amendment MAP 2109 Dorian. To rezone that portion of the west 15 acres of the northeast quarter which lies south of County Road A, except the west 66 feet and except the east 33 feet. Located in section 3, town 39 north, range 16 west, town of Menan, from A2 agricultural residential to C1 commercial zoning district. Zoning change requested by Glenn Doria. Text amendment TXT, or number 4 then, is text amendment TXT 2102, Burnett County Ordinance Chapter 30, changes to various agricultural districts. Public notice hereby given to all persons in Burnett County, Wisconsin, that the Land Use and Information Committee is proposing to amend the Burnett County Code of Ordinances, Chapter 30, changes related to items from the Large-Scale Livestock Ad Hoc Committee.
Thank you, Jason. First on the public hearing is conditional use permit CUP 21-19 Boardwalk MHC LLC. Is Mr. Rick DuBois. Please come up and explain your application.
Basically, to add one site to our Wildwood Bowling Park, in the northwest corner, a large section of the attached garage. Probably be the nicest looking house in the park. Actually, it's from myself. Bought the land to the north to hunt on it. Looking at just to the park.
Thank you. Is there any questions the committee has of the applicant? Now I'll open the public hearing. This time, Don Hamilton.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Land Use Committee. My name is Don Hamilton. I live at 7158 South Devils Lake Drive in the town of Oakland. And I would like to offer my support for this conditional use permit. The town of Oakland Land Use Planning Committee checklist is in your packet. And I would just like to make the committee aware the town of Oakland has invested a great deal of time and energy in reviewing conditional use permit applications for compliance with our recently updated 2040 comprehensive plan. And I would just like to offer my personal opinion of this application. The town of Oakland found a very active and engaged owner and management team with Boardwalk. We do believe that, in our opinion, this application fully complies with our recently updated comprehensive plan, and we would encourage the board to consider approving this application. the conditions that are in front of you today with the staff report, we concur with in Oakland, and I personally concur with those. Obviously, we need a completed site map. There is a CSM that should be done. And I think very importantly for the town of Oakland, we do need the owner to perform an inventory of all the accessory structures that are currently on there. And also the two conditions that this would be the owner's residence and a non-rentable property. So in closing, I would like to again thank the committee and the Land Services staff for taking the time to review the town of Oakland's input on this CUP application, and I would strongly recommend that you approve CUP 2119 subject to the conditions for Grant County staff report. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. Next, we have Mark Krause.
I don't have anything to say at this
No
time.
comment. Okay. Are there any other public comments on conditional use permit 21-19? We did receive the letter from the town of Oakland.
Correct.
At this time, then I'll close the public hearing on conditional use permit 21-19. Committee wish to make any comments?
Supervisor Conroy, no, this is a very innocuous addition to the existing place, and I think subject to the staff report conditions that have been suggested, that this will bring it into full compliance without anything further to be concerned about.
Okay. Anyone else?
I make a motion to approve this conditional use based on the approval considerations 1 through 7, which have to do with the map, have to do with the certified survey, make sure land use permits are obtained, and all of the conditions that apply still apply, follow local, state, and county rules. Owner complete and submit an inventory of all accessory buildings, and this expansion site will be the owner's residence, not a rental property.
I'll second the motion. I will second the motion.
A motion by Mr. Conroy. Roll call vote.
I'm struggling with that, putting the condition on that it's only the owner at the property. Do we even have the authority to do that?
Well, that was what the town of Oakland requested.
I know.
From what I understand, the applicant hasn't objected to that request. I don't know how.
Comment on that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Clarify that. So, I could have put this house on the 70-plus acres that I just bought without going through any of this, right? Just got a building permit, right? So I added it to the park because I've never hunted this land before. It's 2.5 hours from my primary residence. And I'm gonna see how it goes. But I would like to make the point, and I did tell the town, like, this is a mobile home park, okay? And if for some reason, I don't know, I move out of state, or I don't like the hunting there, I would like to be able to sell the property and have somebody pay me lot rent, which is the entire purpose of doing it there. So to clarify, and this is what I clarified to the town, I may sell it in the future, and I don't know how, to your point, sir, I don't know anybody tell me I couldn't resell it to somebody else, but technically, if I resell it, somebody's gonna pay me lot rent, which is the purpose of putting it there. And I could sell the hunting land if I choose to in the future, and I could sell this home in the community and have them pay me lot rent. But I'm not gonna rent it out or do a, VRBO or anything like that. So I'm gonna live in it myself, and if for some reason things don't work out, then I would say I would have the right to sell it to somebody in the community, and they would pay me lot rent, just like the other 31 people do right now.
I'm not troubled by that of condition simply because it's typical to have a owner's or manager's residence within a community like that. So,
But this would be mandated.
yeah, it's true, it's provided for in the code, though, that there may be structures for the manager or the owner. As a condition of a conditional use, if it was necessary to seek to remove it, it would just be reopening that condition in the future.
Correct.
Any other questions or comments in the committee? If not, Mr. Pearson,
Yes.
Mr. Patton,
Yes.
Mr. Bummer. Yeah. Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Raw,
Yes.
Mr. Conroy,
Yes,
Mr. Bickford, yes. Conditional use permit CUP 21-19 has been approved. Next, we have conditional use permit CUP 2120 Bauer, 3-year camper. Mr. Bauer, would you wish to make comments on your application?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you can, go ahead.
Excellent, good morning, and thank you very much. Just want to put out there, we're looking to place a camper on this property during our construction process of a dwelling on the residence. Looking at placing that on there once the septic system's installed and once building permits are obtained. I do have a land use permit through the county and a septic permit in place already. So just looking to get this conditional use permit to start utilizing the property and have somewhere to stay during the construction process.
Thank you. Any questions of the applicant by the committee for this application? If not, I'll open the public hearing. We have not received any written comments.
No correspondence.
No correspondence. Is there any comments from the general public here on this CUP? Now I'll close the public hearing for conditional use permit CUP 21-20. And the staff has set down recommendations, if approval, camper to be placed in compliant location meeting all setbacks. Camping unit to be connected to the sanitary system by 9/1/2021 or when placed on the parcel. 3, follow all local, county, state, and federal requirements for this activity. A motion by a member of the committee.
I'll move to approve.
Motion by Mr. Ahn,
Second.
Mr. Blomberg. Have a roll call vote. Mr. Pearson,
Yes.
Mr. Payton,
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg,
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Ah,
Yes.
Mr. Conroy,
yes,
Mr. Bickford, yes. Conditional use permit 2120 Bauer has been approved. Thank you, Mr. Bauer.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Next, we have rezone request map 2109 Doriot, rezone A2 to C1. Doriot, you want here?
Yep.
Up and explain your application.
Yeah, we want to request, changing A2 property. Selling part of the business. Requested by the township.
I can add, basically we have a storage building and a mechanic's garage or a garage that Glenn operated for many, many years out there. And he's looking to sell the garage and keep the storage buildings, and so it's a A2 zoning district. There's 7 or 8 acres basically, and we're looking to divide it. And the only way to divide it is to make it a smaller zoning district. And we asked for commercial, We've had 2 meetings with the town of Meenan discussing the options there, and they were a little worried with the commercial district zoning about what could happen there. And so they requested, and Jason talked to Tom and the chairman at length there, to see what was the best route to go with there. And they've requested to be changed to R2 instead of C1, and so that's what we are willing to do that, as to keep the conditions there so it's not a full commercial district. The town of Meenan is in the process of doing a land use plan and have not gotten to it. It's their problem for being late, but they asked us to do it this route, and Glenn is fine with that as a way that it could be looked at in the future with part of their land use plan also. And so they were, that was their suggestion. I believe there's a letter in your packet regarding that.
The C1 would still stay with the garage portion then, right?
No, we would ask for, I mean, I think they wanted all zones the same, R2, so, we would look at going R2, and I guess Jason can help answer some of those questions too. That was kind of the recommendation through the zoning office in the town, that would be the way to do it, and make the sizes legal because of division, so.
So then the entire parcel would be R2.
Yeah, right, correct.
Any questions or comments from the committee?
I would say that would simply, it would let the garage remain as a legal non-conforming use because it was established prior to the town of Meenan adopting zoning.
Sure.
With that circumstance, it would never really have to be zoned to commercial. And on a relatively small lot like that, it's unlikely there's much expansion or anything that could happen. It could just stay like that forever and be fine. But if the town of Meenan is updating or developing a comprehensive plan, wants to do some changing, then it could be changed at that time as well. So it seems like a very perfectly rational thing to do. I stepped in before you spoke, Jason.
Nope, you said it. Sounds good.
Yeah, I'll open the public hearing at this time then. Have we received any comments?
Nope, just, the only letter from the town of Meenan.
Are there any public comments? If not, I'll close the public hearing on CUP 21-09. Is there a motion?
Supervisor Conroy, I will move to approve the rezoning to residential recreational 2 as recommended by the town of Meenan.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second.
That would include the items from the staff recommendation?
Yes.
Do you wish me to read them? Conditions would be sanitary system to be serviced, maintained, and report filed with the county by October 1st, 2021. Lock and chain to be installed on the septic tanks by October 1st, 2021. Need to apply for a site address for the storage unit parcel by October 1st, 2021. Certified survey map to be completed to split the parcel into 2 parcels. 5, land use permit to be obtained prior to continuing work on the storage building expansion. 6, follow all local, county, state, and federal requirements for this activity.
Sorry, I was remiss. Thank you.
What are the other requirements? Is there a motion to?
Yes, I'm motion to approve and
Motion approved and seconded. Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Padden?
Yes.
Mr. Blomberg?
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Ah?
Yes.
Mr. Conroy?
yes.
Mr. Bickford, yes. Rezone request map 2109 Dorian has been approved.
Recommend.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It's a rezone, so it's a recommendation to the county board to approve this request. Thank you, Mr. Ah.
And that'll be to our R2 then.
Next, we have text amendment, TXT 2102, Chapter 30, changes related to items from the large-scale livestock study ad hoc committee. Applicant, we have Paul Cardinal.
Oh,
Here, and
Well, this is the text amendments for all the chapter 30 changes, so when you want to open the public hearing, then everybody could start speaking. There is no applicant.
no, there's no
Okay.
applicant.
The county, I guess, would be the applicant.
okay. I will open the public hearing at this time. First that I have on the list is Paul Cardinal.
I'm wondering if we should, before we start the public hearing, just make a brief explanation of what this, amendment package is about. To help people understand what we're doing. And I'll take that on. I was the vice chair of the large-scale livestock siting committee. The applicant package, the amendment package you see here today are recommendations made by the large-scale livestock siting committee, which we met for 18 months, I think, or close to 2 years, in reaction to the Cumberland LLC application for the swine facility in Trade Lake. And we had advice by council. We spoke to a lot of various experts on these issues, but this package are the things that we felt we could do within the law for as far as amending our ordinance. Right now, as we sit here looking at this today, every agricultural zoning district in Burnett County is open to a CAFO. Much of Burnett County is zoned at A2, ag recreational or residential type district that is fairly high density, 10-acre parcel size. And it was determined by our committee and with the advice of council that we could restrict animal units in the A2 district, and we could restrict animal units in the A4 district. But by state law, section 93.90, parent 3, parent AR, we are prohibited from banning or restricting animal units in every agricultural zoning district. So that doesn't mean we're in support of CAFOs necessarily. That means that we would have to regulate them in the exclusive ag district, and we can limit them in the other 2 districts. The district we're deleting, A1, is the ag transitional zone intended for proximity to a residential area that only exists in a couple of sections in the town of Rock. It is not in play for significant agricultural use. So with that said, understand, I don't appreciate the term sacrificial zone. I called our attorney on it when he referred it, that the area we leave unregulated is a sacrificial zone. It's a terrible term. It just means that someone could have a farm of more than 500 animal units in that zone, subject to a conditional use process within the zoning ordinance that remains. The basic zoning ordinance that we're talking about has been in effect since 2007. We have a siting ordinance for large-scale livestock facilities, 500 animal units or larger, which has been in effect since 2007. We're updating that ordinance as well. That's not the jurisdiction of this committee. So with that said, proceed with the public hearing.
Open the public hearing, and the first person to speak, Paul Cardinal. Please state your name.
Paul Cardinal. Had a cabin on the east side of Spirit Lake for, well, half my life, more than half my life. And sometimes I'll sit out there and I'll think to myself, thanks for God, this is really something. Well, recently, quick anecdote, and I'll sit down. A friend of mine, younger man, said his folks wanted to come here and retire on a lake in Wisconsin, 2-hour drive from Red Wing. Would you recommend something for him? I said, well, yeah, anywhere but Burnett County. We've got this over our heads, and Felt really bad about that. We all know and love this place. Thanks for doing what you can.
Thank you. Next, we have Kirstie Allen.
Morning, Supervisors. Can you hear me all right? I'm Kirstie Allen. I live on 20671 Range Line Road. My road is on the border of Anderson and Trade Lake, and my neighbor is Jim Moline. And when we moved into this property, we're at the bottom of a hill, and all the fields that he farms surround us on the top of the hill. Our first spring at that property, it rained a lot, and we noticed that there were several culverts directing water onto our property. I did contact the county about the problem because our basement flooded, and nobody got back to me from the county. So I went to my town, and they sent me to Trade Lake because Trade Lake's the one that built the road, and then Trade Lake sent me back to Anderson. So when this proposed hog factory started to come about, I heard about it from my neighbors, thinking about the fact that there is nothing that we can do to prevent a lot of water rushing onto our property. And this map that shows where all the manure would be spread, which would have all that manure running into our property. I'm a beekeeper. I'm also president of the Wisconsin Hope Burnett Farmers Union chapter. Our chapter has grown. It's doubled in size since I've joined. We now have 15 members, where before I joined, it was essentially dead. And one of the main issues of our union chapter is the scale of these hog factories moving into the area. And I understand you're doing everything that the law says that you should do, but I would challenge you to challenge the law based on the circumstances of such a large facility. It would really destroy my business, which I spent 12 years building and moved out to Burnett County. I just spent $70,000 building a new honey house. I produce honey and sell to local residents. Also, I sell at the St. Croix Falls Farmers Market, and every Saturday I meet a new person who moves out here, has no idea that this is happening, and then they're completely crushed because they come out here for the water, the land, the air, and the agriculture that does exist here that is sustainable and diverse and feeding people in the local community. I have 90 postcards here from the last rally of people writing to county board supervisors to say, please don't allow this number of animal units anywhere in this area. This watershed is fragile. The reason I'm here as a beekeeper is the bees do incredibly well versus in Minnesota, where the landscape has changed dramatically. A lot of it is just corn and soybeans. Bees don't do well with just corn and soybeans. And if you start to sanction and systematically approve this kind of agriculture, there's just going to be more incentive to grow more corn. Thank you very much.
Daniel Kaiser, are you online, Kaiser?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me all right?
Go ahead.
All right. My name is Emmeline Kaiser, and I am a resident of Polk County. I live near East Farmington, so about an hour south of these zones. First off, I just wanted to thank the committee member who gave a little brief update on, what these changes will really do. So thanks for that. And secondly, I wanted to echo some of what Kirstie was saying about the challenges to the Land Use Committee today to really look strategically at the laws that we can put in place to really limit the access of land for these larger hog operations. We do live in a very critical watershed area. It is naive to think that water will not move to greater areas and affect a broader group of people, which is part of why, even being an hour away, I am very concerned about the potential for these hog factories to move in. It's a lot of waste, and the land use is the core way that I feel we can, as a community of St. Croix Valley, really stop or hinder their want to move into this area, whether it's directly touching a lake, whether it's directly touching a river, does not matter when you look at the larger landscape in the area of the Trade Lakes area. There's so many wetlands, so many low spots. The underground topography of limestone is troublesome when looking at how they're going to contain all of the manure and all of the waste stream from these large factory farms. So I would very much encourage the Land Use Committee today to look strategically at the law, and please do not allow ordinances to pass that will make it easy for these CAFOs to move into our communities. Thank you.
Come on. A little less on the clapping. It cuts down on the time that the next person's going to be able to talk. Aaron Cook.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Art Cook, and my family has owned a cabin on Spirit Lake for the last 24 years. And I want to start just by thanking all of you for all the hard work that you've done, and I understand the legal position that you're in. But I would urge you to challenge these laws as much as we can. We've been here for 23, 24 years. We love it here. We love that there's 500 lakes and 14 rivers. We love the beauty. We love the air quality. Let's be clear about a few things. You know, all of us support family farms. There's been a lot of talk about that. An LLC that's owned by an LLC, that's owned by an LLC, that's owned by a Chinese company is not a family farm. That's number one. They're a for-profit company. They're based in China, and they really don't care about the environment here. They don't even care about their own environment. Their money won't stay here. And when something happens, and it will, they'll fold up tent and take off. And the other point, number two, is a hog factory that has 26,000 hogs generating millions of gallons of manure is not a family farm either. They will not be stewards of the land like family farms are, and we support family farms. Most of us are 1, 2, or 3 generations removed from family farming, and we know how hard farmers work to drive us food and take care of their land. Again, a Chinese hog factory is not a family farm. If you just sit down and do the math, this is another reason why we should be challenging this is, according to the 2021 budget, there's $6 million of property taxes that will be paid as revenue for Burnett County. I would venture to say that 25 to 50% of there are people who own recreational land on lakes or whatever. And if this goes through, values will plummet. They will plummet. And who's going to make up that shortage of tax income? In addition, according to the Department of Tourism, $38 million impact of tourism flowing into Burnett County. $38 million. When that goes away, who's going to make up that shortfall? Not the Chinese hog factory, that's for sure. So I urge you, if there's ever a time to challenge the laws from an economic, from an environmental perspective, any perspective you can think of, this is one to do it and to take some risk and do so. Thank you very much.
Next, we have Jerry Krause.
Hello, thank you. My name is Jerry Krause. My spouse and I live as the only property we own at 6720 Hayden Lake Road in Danbury. We reside here seasonally May through October of each year. I grew up on a small farm in southern Minnesota, Waseca County, which has been owned by my family for more than 140 years. We raised about 200 hogs a year and had a Holstein milk herd of about 16. My 92-year-old mother and my brother are still there. Their small livestock operation, however, is long gone, as are virtually every other small operation that once dotted the verdant swath of farmland, which is southern Minnesota. They've been displaced by large industrial-sized confined hog raising operations. recent permit application I looked at last evening for yet a new one indicates there are as many as 50 feedlots within a 3-mile radius of the one being proposed. The stench that's belched from these facilities now blanket wide swaths of the county of what was once an enjoyable place to live. My aged mother, who has lived in the community for more than 70 years, no longer opens the windows to her farmhouse, given that there is a hog operation of 4,000 pigs down the road from her. 15-minute drive from the western side of the county where I grew up to the town of Waseca is now literally a gauntlet of vomit-inducing journey. A roadway that's lined with these facilities. Waseca County, I believe, is yet another cautionary tale. What's likely to unfold here in southern Burnett County if this board were to approve the ordinance changes being proposed. I'm very fearful of the negative impacts you're prepared to unleash.
Thank you. Next, Frederick Tinker.
Good morning, Frederick Maker, Trade Lake. Nice to see you guys again. I'm kind of a numbers guy, and so looking at the Trade Lake Comprehensive Plan, it was mandated by the state, says that 30% of Trade Lake is either wetland or surface water or floodplain. And so that 30% is a pretty scary number when you start spreading pig manure all over the countryside. So Trade Lake took a look at a contract, I guess, with a water specialist who said, Trade Lake, you've got one aquifer. And so that one aquifer is what we're risking down there. So the one aquifer, we decided, well, we're going to test that. So we went to the state lab up in Stevens Point, and we found, we took 154 tests from wells, and we found that they were 95% pure. And so 95% pure water on one aquifer is really quite impressive, actually. And so I felt very appreciative of the old timers who came up here from Scandinavia and cut down the trees and farmed on their century farms for years and years and did not destroy the water. That was pretty fantastic. And so congratulations to them. But the people who are going to be really a problem, I believe, in the long run are going to be your tax base. In the tax base of Trade Lake, 59% it comes from lake properties. So if those 59% wake up in the morning one morning and all they can smell is pig manure, what's the first call they're going to make? They're going to call the realtor. So the realtor tells them, well, yeah, I've got 30 calls this morning already. It's really interesting. But $500,000 property is now worth $250,000. So who's the next person they're going to call? Their attorney. Because you see, they don't have any representation because they're not residents. And so their only alternative is going to be lawsuits. And I think you're going to see quite a bit of that if you don't think this through. And one way to do that is through this, which is the Bayfield Comprehensive Ordinance. Both Bayfield, or I should say all Bayfield and Douglas and Ashland County have passed this with absolutely no legal problems whatsoever from anybody. And so it's in your packet, sent it to you, and I'd appreciate it if you take a little look at it before we go down this road, which to me appears to be disastrous. So in any case, I appreciate your time and think about it.
Truitt.
Morning, Commissioners. I'm Peter Truitt, live in Oakland Township. Scientific knowledge is a good thing, but technology that evolves from it may or may not be. Environmental stewardship is now critically important when choosing technology. Compared to hunting, gathering, and small family farms, I consider CAFOs to be new technology. I'm hoping that we all feel a moral and selfish responsibility to do our part to rehabilitate Earth's critical water cycle modified by our human activity. Former longtime EPA employee says, pod lagoons are capped to capture the biogas. The amount of ammonia increases. much more deadly gas than methane. There are studies that say there's as much methane escapes during the process as is actually captured. According to NASA, excess ammonia is harmful to plants and reduces air quality and water quality. Ammonia gas reacts to form nitrate-containing particles that contribute to aerosol pollution, damaging human health. It also falls back to Earth, enters lakes, streams, and oceans, where it contributes to harmful algae blooms and dead zones with dangerously low oxygen levels. Stockholm Environment Institute says ground level ozone is the most potent air pollutant affecting crop yields and forest productivity by suppressing plant growth and yield. So much of what governments are doing with respect to climate change is aspirational, and proposed policies, if they materialize, won't begin to have an effect for many years. Let's use science and appropriate technology and connect them to mature critical basic needs are met. Climate refugees are looking for this reason as they flee unsustainable situations elsewhere. Generally, wetter climate and extreme weather events overwhelm our county's ability to meet critical basic needs. Historical sources of food here include hunting, fishing, gathering, grain, called wild rice, or manoman, as the Anishinaabe call it, fruits, tree nuts, berries, crops planted by the Anishinaabe, and more recently, agricultural crops brought by immigrants. With a generally wetter climate expected, Burnett County should focus on sustainable food production that doesn't endanger the balance of nature, gifts, or gratitude to meet basic needs. And I will get behind the county and fight them for state, fight the state if necessary. I use advocacy skills well, and I will marshal people to get behind me to help the county fight this.
Hey, Paul.
Hello, Grant. Brent and I served on the Comprehensive Plan Committee a little over 10 years ago. I was chair and Brent was vice chair. And during that time, it was 2 years, multiple meetings every month, if not bi-weekly, and many consultants and many thousands of dollars spent reviewing how we're going to get this county to go down a path for the next 20 years. And it was a lot of work, a lot of herding of cats. And the main thing that we came across was we needed to protect our resources. Having these hog factories in Burnett County is in direct conflict with companies. So the comprehensive plan is a mandate by the state. And when we do things that are in conflict with the comprehensive plan, we have to also answer to the state. So I think we're opening up ourselves for a lot of lawsuits if we're changing zoning, and I'm still not quite understanding how that is changing. But if we allow Ag 2 to have 500 animal units per parcel, I have 15 parcels on my property that are Ag 2. And according to the definition of animal units, that means I can have 75,000 sheep there on 150 acres. And also I could have 75,000 feeder pigs on 150 acres. So there's a lot more to this than what's in front of you. I think we need to slow way down before we make any recommendations and really start to peel this onion back. These guys need feeder facilities for like the mothership that they want to come into Trade Lake. And there's going to be over 450,000 pigs on the minimum estimated created there yearly. They need at least 90 feeder facilities with 150 feeder facilities within a 90-mile radius. And this is where the damage comes, not just from that big, huge facility, but what it's going to do to our county and the surrounding counties. So you think about all those feeder facilities. The reason they need so many is because if they keep under 2,500 pigs, they don't need a permit from the DNR or anybody. So they keep the pigs at $24.99. And that's, you can have them right next to each other all the way down the road. And this is what we're really fighting. And this is what we really need help with. And just to amplify how weird and uneven this is, 3 years ago, I had my, holding tanks, my drain field failed. And I was told that since it was such an old system, I could not fix it. I had to put in a mound system. And I said, well, for Pete's sake, there's not even a smell here. It's just fine. This is Dave and I on 200 acres. And I was told by your office, Craig, that I had to replace it with a mound because we couldn't risk damaging the water supply. So with all that other stuff.
I ordinarily wouldn't, but I want to clarify something that you misstated, I think.
Okay, what was that?
And that is, you're talking about animal units per parcel.
Yeah.
No, it's not what it is, it's per confined facility, feedlot, or structure, not parcel. And right now, there is no limit on how many animal units you can have anywhere in Burnett County. Anywhere, in ag.
Don't you have to go through a permitting process?
You go through a conditional use permit, which may have been back when you were on the board, 2007. We have a conditional use permit for 250 more animal units, but it's the facility, not the parcel.
But what I'm trying to say is, I have 15 parcels on my property that can have 15 facilities.
Oh, theoretically, but each one would require a conditional use permit, and I think we'd get onto that before you got very far with that.
I hope so, because I can split those up and sell them to China.
I'm not debating it, I'm just trying to clarify, it's not per parcel.
I'm just trying to clarify how that can, the long range, I think we need to slow this whole thing down.
I just wanted to clarify that term, just to make sure we're all talking
I
about.
appreciate it, thank you.
Howard, I have a question for the board. How many people on the board have read the 30-year plan for Glacial Lake Grantsburg, or even heard of Glacial Lake Grantsburg? Raise your hand. Now, that's what I do. Why don't you go home tonight and Google Glacial Lake Grantsburg? You will find a report about a very interesting part of our county. Glacial Lake Grantsburg starts in northern Polk County, and it runs all the way up to Ashland and Bayfield County. And if you read the DNR's report, it's a 117-page report, very easy to read. It tells what a gem we have here. It refers to Creeks and Fish Lake as the flagships of DNR properties. It also refers in there to all the endangered and rare species. We have 80 or 90 of these in our area. This is not just a thing in Wisconsin. This is worldwide. Read the report, it's very interesting. So, with this in mind, I'm going to read a letter that I got the other day. Hello, please find enclosed a donation to your organization. My husband and I are landowners in Burnett County, but we live in Iowa on a 170-acre farm that we have owned since 2001. Our farm using sustainable and farm practice and mostly for our own use. Woods and pasture and CRP crops. We don't raise livestock except for what we eat ourselves. But we are concerned about water quality. In our county, there is little we can do because farmers are in charge of all the CAFOs and legislative offices. We are suffering from polluted water, and we hope that Polk and Burnett County will not go the same route. Certainly, our story is one. We would like to have the beautiful environment of Polk County and Burnett County remain as is. This person lives in Iowa. They know what it is to have CAFOs in the area, and they also know what it is to have clean water. This is a map. If you look at Iowa, you can see there's different blocks. Each one of those, if you look at it, is a different hog producer. Smithfield, JBS, JBS in another location, and the packing plant in
Thank you. We divided it up. And, thank you very much. They're coming up to get us. They want our clean hands up. Thank you.
I'm Van Brock, I live in Trade Lake. A few weeks ago, about 6 weeks ago, I was in Iowa, just south of Sioux Falls, down where Minnesota, South Dakota, and Iowa all come together. I stayed in a resort down there, playing golf, down there for 3 days. Wind blew constantly for the first two. Third morning, I got up, and I was sitting on our balcony that I had sat on the previous 2 mornings, and had coffee before I went down to play golf for the day. Now, I was leaving the third day. I was sitting there on the balcony, having my coffee. There was no wind. And all of a sudden, about 10 minutes sitting there, I started feeling queasy, and I realized I was breathing in hog manure. Literally breathing in hog manure. Started getting a little bit queasy in my stomach. After 15, 20 minutes, I was like, forget it, and went in, packed my bags, and got out of there. And it kind of dawned on me when I was driving away. Well, that's why they don't have screen doors on the windows to the balcony. And they have timers on the door that sound an alarm that's open for more than 30 seconds because they don't want that hog manure in their building. So I was telling somebody about it, and I said, it's kind of like sitting in a chocolate milkshake. Just couldn't get away from it. Well, last week, I mow grass for a living. Last week, I'm out mowing. We had all that smoke. The air was brown. Remember that? Think of that as being hog manure in the air, floating around, that you can see. Down there, you couldn't see it, but you could sure smell it. But it was, when I was driving, it felt the same way. It's like, this is what it would feel like if you could actually see the air. The manure in the air was all that smoke that we had. When you're out there walking around, we're in the smoke the next few days, think of it as hog manure, because that's what we're going to be walking around in. It was horrible. There was not a hog farm or factory within sight of where I was staying. It was the fields around the area that had been sprayed with the hog manure as fertilizer earlier in the spring. That was smelling. And it's probably been 6 or 8 weeks since they fertilized those fields, but it's still that strong. So, and went into Sioux Falls, and there, lo and behold, there was Smithfield. It was about a 6 or 7 acre parking lot on a Saturday, so there wasn't anybody working. But it was huge. But anyway, you know, they're going to kill our water, and they're going to kill our air, and then they're going to leave. And we are being duped by a bunch of liars and con men. And I was there the first night. Jeffrey Sauer came with Jim Moline and the fellow from the dairy, trying to blow smoke up our butts, trying to tell us how wonderful this thing was going to be. Thank you.
Mark Holsether.
Mark Holsether here. I live along Highway 48 in Trade Lake Township. I'm fourth generation from Erickson, Haynes, and Wedin, that were the Swedish founders of Trade Lake and West Sweden. I have a little log cabin on what used to be a pasture on a farm where my mom grew up. And I'm very much hoping to retire here and invest a lot of years and money and pass it on to the next generation. It's very much in question for all the reasons that have been mentioned, which I won't belabor. I want you to understand that I have cousins and uncles on both sides of my family in 4 states that raise pigs and cows on small farms. So I think I do understand a little bit about how farmers feel, and I'm not just one of these interlopers here in the economy. There are such things as regulations that get out of control. Mary just mentioned one. I don't want anybody to give me a ticket if I forgot to put my bike helmet on or put my seatbelt on or have a dog on my property or play music. I don't want anybody in my business there, right? But we have to have licensing for cars and we have to have rules, so I can't have a pack of rabid dogs, and I can't have 24-hour very loud music. That's what noise ordinances are for, and traffic regulations. We have to have this. We have to have a three-legged stool in our economy. We can't knock out the tourists and retirees and people that want to telecommute to Minneapolis. We have to make it work for all three legs of the stool and not have a one-legged stool that sends the money off to China. We have to figure out how to regulate this. An existential crisis for our community. So we have to work it out. Thank you for listening to me, and I appreciate your work. I know it's a hard task, but we have to make it work.
Carol Harden.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Carol.
Okay, my name is Carol Harden and I live in Hudson, Wisconsin. I've learned a lot about CAFOs when it became an issue in the small town of Emerald in St. Croix County. I'm going to talk about CAFOs in general because explaining specifics would greatly exceed the limit of the time I have. I've learned that CAFOs are not good for anyone, except for the owners who stand to profit. The major problems are related to the word concentrated. Too many animals in too small an area. The biggest problem is the threat to clean water. Concentrated animal feeding operations produce more wastewater than most large cities, but this wastewater does not go through any treatment plant. On CAFOs, the liquid waste is often laced with all kinds of toxic chemicals and is usually stored on site in large outdoor lagoons, which have been known to leak, spill, and overflow. CAFO wastes are usually spread on farm fields as fertilizers. Again, this is too much and too small an area. It can leach into the groundwater in areas with porous bedrock. This contaminates families' wells, as has happened in places such as Emerald and other parts of the state. And it causes high concentrates of nitrates in the people's wells, and they can't even drink their own water. Such concentrated applications can cause runoffs that flow downstream, following waterways, killing fish and other aquatic animals. They flow into fragile trout streams and into waterways such as the St. Croix River, which is part of a national park. Then there's the air quality. The fumes from the CAFOs with many noxious chemicals are dangerous to people with compromised immune systems and respiratory conditions such as asthma. Not to mention the fumes are so overwhelming that the neighbors can't even sit outside their homes. So with polluted well water and foul air, their property values plummet. This is property and homes they worked so hard for. And they also use quite a bit of antibiotics, massive use, because the animals are so concentrated. This overuse can lead to strains of infectious diseases that are resistant to current medications. To those who say factory farms provide cheap meat, I say, but at what cost to the environment and the communities where they're sited? Small farmers are driven out of business because they can't compete with sustainable CAFOs. They won't provide lots of good jobs, low pay, and dehumanizing work, and companies often bring in outside employees. So I say no good comes of CAFOs, except for the profits of the owners, who, in my opinion, should have to live in the polluted environments their industry created. Local residents are entitled to have clean air and especially clean water, and their local government should protect that.
Thank you. There's several emails sent to us. Have we had any other letters that were sent in?
You have all the correspondence, in your packet or emailed to you. Kim Dupree sent an email with some information to you guys. Attorney Nick Vivian sent an email. Rick Painter sent an email with his stuff that he spoke about. Had, Rick Painter again. We have Lisa Idy, Painter, Christy Allen, Kyle Bondraff, John Kingstad, Alan and Rhonda Johnson, Ellen Cylinder, Painter, Sarah Lake. That's all the correspondence that you guys have in your
That's the list of people I had for public comments. That was through.
Some left in the door when the sign-in sheet out front here.
So now I believe you want to ask, if there's anybody that didn't speak that still wants to speak in the audience.
Any other public comments? You have 3 minutes. Go ahead. State your name.
Morning, Ramona Moody, Town of Trade Lake. According to the county's comprehensive plan, agriculture makes up approximately 11% of the county. According to the 2007 land use assessment data, Trade Lake has approximately 8,718 acres of farmland in the town, which equates to 38.4% of the land in the town. And that is part of what makes up the 11% for the county, agriculture in the town of Trade Lake. The county's wetland and surface waters makes up 25% of the county. The town of Trade Lake, surface water alone makes up 9.4% of that. The town of Trade Lake also has 9,494 acres of wetland, floodplain, and surface waters. Much of the town has a water table that is less than 12 inches from the surface. When comparing the 8,718 acres of agriculture of the county with the 9,494 acres of wetlands, floodplains, and surface waters, it shows how much more water than in highly sensitive areas of agriculture that the town has. How do the proposed changes protect our aquifer, our environment, and our health? With the proposed changes, you're putting a target directly on Trade Lake's case. I appreciate all the work that you've done, Supervisor Conroy, with the recommendations, but in order to protect the county, it's not enough, and it does little or nothing to protect the town of Trade Lake. I ask that you give the changes more substance to protect the public health and our environment. I also ask that you would implement a county-wide cable operational ordinance.
What else? Please state your name.
My name is Norman Peterson, and I live in Trade Lake, about 3 miles from the proposed cable facility. Thank you, supervisors, for listening to all of my comments. It means a lot. I agree with all of it. I remember being at the township meeting where Jim Moline said, Trade Lake is dying. He said that publicly. And we were hoodwinked by Mr. Sauer, Mr. Anderson, who falsely represented what they were presenting. But I'd like to comment briefly on the term sacrifice zone. I know you said you didn't like it, neither do I. I was in the 6-Day War, and one of our sister ships got sunk by the Russians. And ostensibly I was in top secret intelligence, and it actually was sunk by the Israelis, a torpedo boat, but we thought it was the Russians at the time. And 150 of our men, all hands, lost. And that was devastating. We had a lot of friends on board that ship. And we were next. The Russians came after us at night. Guided missile frigate pointed them right at me. And we thought we were sunk too. We had Tomcats operating at Cap, and they painted them with radar. They knew what was next, so they veered off. But the word sacrifice, wherever it came from, and whether this board disagrees with it or not, it's out there. It's out there and the public is infuriated with that. Sacrifice is what was done by those men. Sacrifice means giving your life for your country. It's just, we all, as sailors, put our lives on the line, sacrifice for our country as well. It doesn't mean what it seems to mean in the media. It's not up for grabs. That's not a sacrifice. That is criminal. Thank you very much.
No.
Hearing no other comments, I'll close the public hearing at this time. Committee members wish to make any comments?
I think at this point, we need to go through the proposed amendments. And, Mr. Ferris from Land and Water will be coming down to help answer some questions on that. But I think, ordinarily, when we're doing an amendments, we go through them and discuss the changes. Jason, do you want to proceed, and I'll jump in where?
Yeah, should I put this on the overhead?
That'd be okay,
That
sure.
might help.
Sure.
Give me 1 minute here to get my screen.
Somebody text Dave and tell him we're ready for him.
It'll be the same as what we got on your iPad.
Make sure people can see. Just clearing so people can see it.
All right, so, I went through the, ordinance here with Craig, and we, I highlighted a bunch of items for us to look at, change, delete, add, so they're all color-coded there. So we'll just start going through them, page by page here. So the stuff that's in gray, I said need to verify statute or code cross-reference. So, real quick here, on page 1, the, 5969 is Planning and Zoning Authority, 59694 is Board of Adjustment, 8730 is Floodplain, 9130 is Farmland Preservation, 56692 is Planning and Zoning Authority. So those are just statutes that we reference in our ordinances. Page 2, there was nothing change. Page 3, just another statute reference, 5669, or 5969 is Planning and Zoning Authority again. So as we were going through this, we just wanted to make sure all of our ordinance references were correct. Page 4, statute 10392, that's about migrant labor camps. 9112 is farmland preservation, 9110 is farmland preservation. Again, page 5, has nothing. Page 6 has nothing. 7 has nothing. Okay. Page 8, statute 661001 is comprehensive planning, so that's just referenced in our statutes. The Ag Transition District, the item in green there, that's to be struck. Like Craig mentioned in his opening remarks, that there's only a couple sections of land It's supposed to be ag that's up next to a village. It's not even being used that way right now, so recommendation was just to get rid of that district.
I might add, and when that would be, those properties would be rezoned to either A2 or A4, is what was proposed.
Yep.
There's a few other places that could happen.
Page 9, nothing. Page 10. So items in blue, or turquoise, I guess, is questions that I came up with as I was going through ordinance as well. So right now, this is in the permitted uses in the RR district, so it does mention horticulture and gardening. I just had a comment, do we want to define it by a maximum area or size? Not that we want to start regulating gardens and stuff, but, you know, you could start to say that a garden is technically an ag practice. When does it expand so much that it's no longer personal use? You know, so that was just a comment of mine.
Number 4 on animal units in RR districts. This will come up again when we talk about setbacks from structures housing animals. Generally speaking, we have a kind of a soft cap of 2 animal units in that district for somebody's horse or pot-bellied pig or pig in the goat or whatever else they have. That, I thought this thing was different. Like the double mic here. Anyway, I don't know that we want to set that. If we could, it would be an amendment not to the ag zone, but to the RR zone.
Yeah.
If we
Yeah, it was just a thought of mine, and they all have to go through a conditional use permit right now, no matter if they wanted to have one animal unit in a residential district, so.
Right. I think our soft cap has been fairly effective so far, I think.
Okay. Page 11, another statute reference, 7109, that is related to taxes. Page 12. So now we're in the exclusive ag district. So on the first item there, line 1 is in yellow. That was an item that we said we thought we should recommend about how they're allowed to have a manufactured home or farm help. That they would still need a conditional use permit if they wanted to actually have something size of a mobile home park or manufactured home park.
Some of this is cleaning up language from 2007 that mobile homes are not even out there anymore. They're been extinct since 1976.
Yep. Line 7, that's just putting in the POUTS reference, acronym for it. Your lines 15 through 21. So, I don't know, Craig, do you want to speak to this?
Well,
this is probably stuff out of the committee.
Yeah, I think I added property line because it was boundary before,
yep.
And it struck me that it was a questionable term. Again, the recommendation, some of these were just trying to clean up cumbersome language. Jason put in the question about setback. I think that applies to general farming in A2 or A or A2 or A4 to appear by reference back to this permitted use. And the issue is it's not really general farming when somebody has a animal that's not a dog or a cat in residential. I think we recognize you're not likely to be able to do it if you have to be 100 feet with the building from either lot line. On a lot that might not be 150 feet wide. So I think our conditional use review to require them to manage their dog or cat pet, is enough to cover that right now. It provides us some flexibility, doesn't come up that often anyway. I added, make things clear, I added the word water body to navigable water because that's more of the term of art today. It means feature itself. Navigable water probably does too, but it'll be clarifying.
Pardon me, a body sounds like a lake.
Lake or wetland, yeah. There's navigable water body. There's no minimum size for a lake in Wisconsin.
I was thinking rivers.
Rivers are the same, I believe. We could verify that if we excluded a river by accident. I don't think we get. And I added feedlots and buildings housing more than 250 animal units will require a conditional use permit. It's a permitted use. I should say a conditional use permit, even in an exclusive ag district. This is just clarifying that.
Question. What is our intent today with this document? What is our intent today with this document?
Well, what we're trying to do is go through the recommendations that we made. The reason we added that clarifying note there is because before this amendment package, we would have had no limits on animal units in any district. There would not have been a need to clarify what triggers a conditional use and what the hard cap is, and that we'll come to that further on.
But we're not making any decisions right now.
No, we're just trying to go through and explain what these changes are.
Our purpose today with this document is just to review it.
To review it, yes. Now, at the end of the review, we could conceivably make a motion to move it on, or we could recommend some amendments or changes to it.
Well, in reading through the entire document, there are several places that need to have answers. They need to have a.
Right, and I think we're gonna try to get those answers today, and we very likely will hold a second public hearing on this package before we're done.
We're not answering some of these questions that.
Well, Craig answered the question about residential.
Line 44 is the next yellow one.
Yeah, so the, couple gray ones there, statute reference again, all farmland preservation. 44, I think we just added the word use for clarity. Additional use permit.
Right, and we found through this ordinance conditional permit a lot, and then some other times conditional use permit, one time special exception. It was all things that are synonymous, trying to make it read consistently.
Here was, page 13 was just adding the name exclusive agriculture after the letter A, adding some clarity. Item 10. This is,
Item, yeah, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Line 15, item 10.
Line 15, yeah.
This is new. We added setbacks for these facilities. And Jason's question, David, I think, can back me up on this, but facilities includes feedlots and or concentrated animal feeding operations. The term should be interchangeable. What we're saying here is setbacks shall meet or exceed the minimum standards established in Wisconsin Administrative Code 151. But we are also, at the county level, want to say these facilities are subject to application of odor offset standards blank right now. Dave will talk about this in a minute, which may require greater setbacks and or additional mitigation to protect public health, safety, and welfare. Many of you may know that NR 151 about 3 years ago attempted to adopt additional greater setbacks based on number of animal units. and, the ag lobby shouted it down and they withdrew the whole amendment package, even though they are prescribed by law to review that code every so often and update it. Dave, do you want to talk about what we're gonna use for those odor offset things?
Well, what we're going to do is we're looking at various states all around us to see what's most scientifically valid model that we can use, and we'll stand up. And we're going to apply that to both the livestock setting ordinance and the land use ordinance, and we have come up with some pretty solid things. And actually, as Supervisor Conroy said, is Wisconsin was looking at revising that a couple, 3 years ago, but didn't really fly. We're gonna basically use the same criteria that they were using and try to apply that here in Burnett County.
And there are three that we like. The EPA, federal EPA has developed a draft, sound science based on odor. Minnesota has a model ordinance that it uses for odor offset. Iowa has taken Minnesota's ordinance and modified it to provide an incremental increase based on animal units. Any of those, these are not going to be adopted into the ordinance. I don't believe legally we can do that, but we will use them as appendices, and this is part of a review for compliance with permitting when we get to our conditional use section. But that's an effort to address that concern as far as we think we can take it. Move on, I think.
Line 21 is just adding the word use again, 22, use, exclusive ag, so cleaning up language. Line 30, again, is just cleaning up language to make it consistent. Let's see here, statute 9146, again, farmland preservation. Page 14, the item in pink there, I have, I guess this is just a question. We have airstrips when they are agricultural related. I don't even know if we have an agricultural related airstrip in Burnett County that I'm aware of.
They don't either. Sometimes crop dusters land wherever they need to, and that's really not an official airstrip. There's some, we did do some private airstrips in Washburn that were for private use as well as agricultural use. That may be where this came from, but I don't know.
So I guess the reason I highlighted, I just didn't know if we wanted to strip that. This is the items that are conditional uses in exclusive ag. Do we want to strip that item out of here or leave it as is, I guess? Meaning they'd have to get a CUP if they wanted to have an ag-related airstrip.
I don't see any real harm if they do. I can tell you that just from private strips, which we haven't had, but we have had some issues with them in Burnett. We have more of them in Washburn, and neighbors sometimes get concerned about low flying and that kind of thing. Just a way to say it's sanctioned, I think, that would be all.
About helicopters, they usually land on a truck.
Yeah, true. And I think that's part of agricultural practice. Spraying, it's not a lot of the traffic on a private strip sometimes is potentially not ag related, just pleasure flying maybe, I don't know.
I think this is probably boilerplate language or something where you would have an airstrip that somebody would use as a base, basically, to do all their spraying around a region or something. So.
Yeah, I gotta say, I think it's probably boilerplate language in the ordinance language that was adopted.
Yep.
Probably it's because it was inserted.
So I think we could just leave it in there like Craig says. I mean, they'd have to come through and get a conditional use permit if they want to do that, so. The two gray ones there, 9146 again, is farmland preservation. Got line 13 was just adding the word use. I have a question here about, this is listing all the conditions that are attached to a conditional use permit, all the items below this, which most of them are ag-related verbiage. I just wanted to know if we wanted to add some conditions for non-ag-related items, like a sawmill. If you had a sawmill in an ag district, you want to have some generic conditions that would apply to a sawmill. Again, I think it's probably some.
I think, I wondered about that myself. And I kind of came to the conclusion that we have some other provisions applicable to general conditional uses. Maybe those things should reside there that apply to all, no matter what district.
Yep.
But bearing in mind, this was just a redo of the ag sections based on the LSLS recommendations, and I didn't try to take it beyond that.
Yep.
So something to consider, yes. Maybe more than one way to do that.
So items 1, 2, 3, that's where we enumerated all the conditions.
Right.
That was a recommendation, I believe, from
There used to be a paragraph that didn't enumerate conditions, which made it harder to apply. And so we modified it throughout each district. We did add in specifications, the old language with specifications for liquid waste and solid waste disposal facilities, period. That was it. We added land application rates, then we, modeling after the siting ordinance, animal waste disposal plan, including total quantity per year, nutrient value, location and volume of application to each spreading site. If using rented or leased land, a signed landowner agreement must be provided for each site. We're asking for that in part because DNR is working through an administrative rule on targeted nitrate standards that we're not adopting per se, but are recognizing that that is going on and will affect potentially significantly how often you can spread and what volume you can spread. Nitrogen, nitrate, nitrite being potable water issues, public health related issues. And we also noted that the animal waste storage facilities are regulated under Chapter 18, which is the siting ordinance. The location is part of the land use ordinance, but the actual details of the structure are in the siting ordinance. The other yellow things are all existing, and then that's for Jason's question, some on noise levels and such, air pollution controls. Maybe baseline is a good idea. Water pollution, that should have been yellow too, but
Yep, sorry.
But baseline monitoring kind of is what Trade Lake has done with sampling wells, but certainly not a bad idea. Erosion prevention measures, location of use. Location of use is sort of related to some of the non-ag type things anyway, that could happen. And then we probably do need to do a discussion of violation language or penalty fees. Yeah, we did not recommend anything about that, but added that this would be I guess that was already there.
So do you want to put noise levels in on that, on number 6? Noise levels, lighting, trucking hours, et cetera?
I think we talked about that, maybe somewhere we have in more in general.
Okay.
Conditional use provisions.
Not specifically to
Not
this.
specifically to ag.
Gotcha.
Because you start to mess a little bit with, tractors are noisy and
Yep.
that kind of thing. And
Some are noisy.
yeah. Sawmill would be a separate CUP type of thing, I think. But that we always have the right to reserve those kinds of conditions as we consider something as a conditional use permit.
Yeah, and my thought was, that do we just wanna maybe enumerate those items that you have the generic statement of operational controls and time of operation. Do we want to say, and, like something, and including items like, you know, noise levels, lighting, trucking hours? I just know with Act 67, we get so much pushback that if it's not listed in the ordinance, we shouldn't be looking at it.
Good point.
You know.
I think there's an argument though that with the conditional use permit, anything that's raised in a public hearing can be considered outside the ordinance, which is the main benefit of the CUP over the administrative permit. But you're right. I think enumerating them, things that the committee may consider would be a really good way to do that. If we can modify that easily by just saying it such as, the committee may consider items such as, kind of like we did previously about odor offset, that kind of thing. But I think we'll do that. Make a note. Remember to do that.
I think it's important to note that all of these things are intended to be reasons why we can apply a condition to a business that might deny them the ability to come. We're not saying anywhere in this thing that you're just allowed to do it, but if you don't meet a certain set of conditions, we can turn you down, and I think it's been very well considered throughout so far that we've covered most of those things.
Right, and what's helpful is that the Legislative Council's report on Act 67 grant made the argument that you can't deny it less strong, but it's still out there. It's still the 900-pound gorilla of the conditional use permit is Act 67.
I think this committee has proven that we'll push to the limit of that Act 67.
Yeah, I agree.
So for items 7 and 8, should we kind of do the same thing, air pollution controls such as including baseline monitoring before construction?
Yes.
So just to add some clarity to that language?
Yes, absolutely. We should just expand our options.
Line 38 there, I guess we could talk about that when we get to the violation language section. 30-659.
The thing we talked about in the citing ordinance was the multiplier effect of repeat offense. You might want to look at that, matching up with that.
Okay, we'll look at citing, see how that correlates to that. Next page is just some ordinance references or statute references, 9146, farmland preservation again, cross-reference and other statute language. Page 16. This would be striking the district A1 again. We talked about removing it from the table earlier. Now this is where all the verbiage of that section is. Okay, so now we're moving into A2 district, which is our ag/residential district. Page 17. So this, I believe, is lines 19, 20 is a change from the LS committee about putting an animal unit limit in A2.
Well, this existed before, but one of the issues was it used to say as permitted under section 3016A, but there was no cap. Or in this case, it was still clarifying it. It's permitted up to 250. After that, it's a conditional use permit. we want to make it perfectly clear everywhere possible what the caps are and where they are. If you get down to 10, where you have a question,
Yep.
you're asking about 13, and I agree. On 13, I looked up that statute, and I think it's been amended. It's in definitions, and I think it defined farming. I think we just have to strike 13, because I think it's no longer applicable. I thought we'd come upon it sooner. I wanted to mention that. But the number of, when you look at what that says, there's like number 2 and number 19, and they're neither one are relevant. Only 11 items in that section. I think that's when the statute changed. And again, when you get to line 33, it was the same exception for the 250 up to a maximum of 500 animal units in A2. Let's make that perfectly clear.
And on the next.
And that was the question you asked for David's here. There's no reason that capping animal units would in any way impair participation in farmland preservation, correct?
There's no relation on each other. FPP is set up on a special overlay district, and as long as they qualify for income requirements and everything, the overlay district is zoning.
Yeah, the cap will not harm anyone then.
Lines 4 through 23, this was again enumerating, if I remember correctly, adding the definition for conditional uses.
Right, and the number 10 was new again, and that, rather than rewriting it, just referred back to for section 3117, parent 10, for the details on the voter offset stuff. Again, number 4, on line 32, cap 500 animal units, lots of buildings.
Lines, let's see here, page 19, line 16 and 19 is just adding the word use to clean up the language a little bit. Line 22, striking that reference to exclusive ag.
And in the same discussion we previously had about where we had duplicate the language about operational controls, same exact thing.
Yep. Let's see here, page 20, so this again would be the same discussion we had before about adding the operation or pollution controls. We'll put the violation language fees to match up with citing again, that reference.
And we get to A4.
Yep.
We're essentially duplicating. The A4 was a little different, it was a little bit more modern district than A2 was. And it was more a mirror of A, but we put the 250 animal unit conditional use and 500 animal unit cap in A4 as well. It is a kind of a unique almost zoning district in that it combines forestry, agriculture, and residential, but at a very low density, 35 acre minimum parcel size, farmland preservation eligible. I think that we have a slaughterhouses, rendering, and fertilizer plant, probably boilerplate language from there. Probably leave it because I don't know that it would affect farmland preservation to remove it, but it's what it was. I'm not sure how likely any of that would be, but it was in the original ordinance.
Page 21. Again, this is adding the language, conditional use permit. Line 23 is just language cleanup. Oh, okay, yeah, that was, you talked about the slaughterhouses. For the animal units. Page 22, striking that. We know it won't make A4 ineligible for farmland preservation. Line 19, we'll have that again match the citing ordinance.
Stuff is all the cleanup here and there.
Yep. Page 23, yeah, was just the statute reference 9148, that's farmland preservation again. Page 24 was nothing. 25 is nothing, that's industrial district. 6, this is in a forestry district.
I think what they're talking about there is the logging shelters and the maple syrup production facilities and stuff. I think what we need to do is go back and pick out the forestry related issues and put them there and strike, amend that. Because it doesn't, just throwing in blanket references to ag districts, I didn't honestly remember it was even there, you know. We're in forestry now, so it's not an ag district. And whatever capable wouldn't be allowed in a forestry district, as long as we make sure it isn't. That's what we'll fix on that in next side of line 13, number 13, we need to strike that there as well. I don't see any harm with grazing. There's conservation district.
Oh, yeah, on page 28 here, yep, grazing. So again, we're talking stuff that's in the resource district, which is basically your, I guess, marginal land, swamp.
Sometimes floodplain, wetland fringes, you know, you wouldn't want to do anything much, but cattle grazing in a edge meadow when it's dry would probably not hurt anything.
Yeah. Page 29 has nothing. 30 has nothing. 31. Line 6 here was just removing, because that district is going away, so taking out the A1 language. My question was add or remove any other districts.
I think,
This is again in talking farmland preservation overlay.
right, so it provides in forestry, in fact, do we do that ever?
Yeah, forestry is an agricultural product, so if you have to meet the minimum income requirements with a forest product, you can still claim FP3 credits. And I would suggest that you keep the FPP overlay for all of the districts. That really is irrelevant of whether it's cattle or crops or whatever, it's just an income requirement.
So that makes sense, because some of the land we have in Swiss Township is a lot of timbered land that's currently zoned exclusive ag. That we might change, but we might change that to forestry, they'd still be eligible for farm.
Yes, correct. You'd have to make sure they're within the overlay district, which I'm assuming we are there.
Okay.
So that would also then basically answer the question there on line 8 and 9. Sounds like it'd be okay.
I didn't know it was included, I guess, it's one of those things I missed.
Line 27, we'll have that match the citing language again. Page 32, just removing A1 out of the table. All the items related to it. Page 33, same thing, removing all the A1 out of the table. Page 34 is nothing. 35, nothing. 36 was nothing. 37. So right here, we are in our PRD district. Don't deal with that ever very much. But I just,
We could.
we could, yep. I just highlighted here when I went through the ordinance, anything that looked ag related, I highlighted just to make sure we weren't missing something. So this has a requirement that the open space, if you're in a PRD district, shall be deed and plat restricted to non-structural ag, forestry, rec, or environmental protection. So I think that's more of, the PRD would be like a subdivision where somebody would do, let's say they had a large ag field or something, and they had a wooded area on the corner of it. They would maybe want to drop some houses in the corner of it. So those would be condensed close to each other, but then in the trade-off, they would say, all right, we're going to leave the rest of this farmland open space. We're going to restrict it, so it's going to stay ag farm use forever going forward.
I can see that. Some commonly held areas that are going to remain open, could be a horse pasture or something, with no structural or subdivision type lots.
And again, this would be a rezone request they have to go through to get into this district, so I'm assuming if they came in and said, we want to put 1,000 cows on this open pasture, there might be some hesitation to that, so.
The underlying zoning district would be controlling anyway.
Yeah.
Density-wise, it'd be, if it was A2, it would be based on 10 acres per dwelling, but the lots might be small as long as they held common interest in the horse pasture.
Yep. So I think we're fine with leaving that in there. Line 30, same thing, just talks about design guidelines again, or in that PRD district. So I think we would just leave all those in there as well. You would look at those on a case-by-case basis when the project came through for a rezone. Page 38 has nothing, 39 nothing, 40 nothing, 1 nothing, 42, 44.
Does conservation stuff?
Yes, so this is in so again, I just highlighted, I came across stuff that was ag related for us to look at. Again, this kind of goes back to, animals grazing in a dry meadow or something for the year. I think that stuff's okay in that district. .45. Same thing, this is in that resource district. Again, I just highlighted things that, looked ag-related. I don't think anybody probably has any concerns with those items. .6, nothing. .47, nothing. .48, nothing. .49, nothing. This is all, now we're into sign ordinances. That's some fun reading if you're bored, anybody. 57 would just be striking the A1 district out of the table related to sign sizes and types in that district. .59, the same thing, removing the A1 district out of the table related to signs. 62, same thing, removing A1 from the sections dealing with signage.
I believe Mary left, but after all the work, she put it on the side of it.
Sorry, I'm scrolling through here to see when our next item is here. I don't even. 88. Page 88, huh? Page 87, I have something highlighted in gray, but that's just the statute reference to zoning. Here. Page 88. So this is in the section about zoning administrator duties and powers.
We have an exemption for land use permit requirement for farm buildings, farm structures, shed, pole buildings, silo, windmill, silage structure, grain crop, winter storage, all of that stuff. And then you question whether we needed to do any change. It occurs to me that, for a confined animal operation for 500 animals, units or more, that would fall under the signing ordinance, maybe should get a land use permit for that structure, if it's so big.
Yeah, it would be a substantial structure, and right now, it would need a land use permit.
I could see that, whatever it's worth. Didn't thought about it till today, really.
Proposing a change?
Well, I'm just throwing it out there, what do you think?
It would be a big change.
Yeah, if one, it also, it is a conditional use permit required from 250 up, but only that's just for the land use, and not for structure.
Right.
So, it occurs to me, it's not an unreasonable thing for a large operation, large structure that's new.
In this one, you're saying a land use permit is not required for a windmill? So.
I love it's all.
Ag-related windmill.
Ag-related windmill, not a,
Not a electric generator?
no, I think that's in the olden days of water pump windmill.
Yeah, that's what I meant, but it still says windmill.
It's ag-related, items that are ag-related. Yeah.
And they could have electric one to power a battery on a remote ranch someplace, but.
Couldn't all windmills be construed as ag-related?
If it was powering something for the farm, I would think. Otherwise, that's not a wind farm, just a single.
We have people wanting to put like decorative windmills up that are more than 40 feet tall in non-ag districts, you know, so we regulate that now, because it's not ag related.
That was my point.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
I don't have, one thing I had not thought about till I read through this a couple of days ago. That's what consensus of the committee, do you think we should be doing a permit for a large confined operational building?
Well, it has the same issues as whether they're in the building or not.
But I don't, what was the question now?
And maybe I'm wrong, I thought the question was about structures. The house more than 150 animals, you want to permit.
Conditional use permit, but that's a land use permit. I'm sorry, that's a permit for the size of the operation, but not for the individual structure involved. For example, now, if you get a conditional use permit for a bar and restaurant, you still have to get a land use permit for the structure. If we approve the use on the site, but for livestock, it would be adequate ability to manage manure and odors and that kind of thing, not necessarily how the building is permitted. To permit, they could build the building then without any kind of land use permit. That's the question.
See, in the land use permit, that's triggering us to look at, are they meeting the appropriate setbacks with the actual building? Are they meeting floodplain requirements with the actual building? Are they meeting, you know, so that's what the trigger of the land use permit is doing, is us investigating those other items that might crop up.
There could be other conditions added to the operation on, you know, structure, air exchange, all those sort of things would be in play if we were issuing a land use permit to reinforce the conditions set on the CUP. That would be the benefit I would see of doing it.
I would say, you know, another thing is we require permits now if somebody wants to build like a 12 by 12 shed in their backyard, but you want to build a 10,000 square foot egg shop, you don't have to get a permit for it. The permit thing also triggers the assessor, you know, because the assessor right now gets a copy of all the permits that the county issues, so that's kind of a flag to them to look at that property to see if they need to change the assessed value.
My thinking, you know, like, I think it's fine that we don't need any permits for corn cribs and things that are, you know, relatively, almost, take up and take down, relocate potentially, you know, big underground silo bunks like they do now. Obviously, we would want to permit for that. But for the core building, housing the livestock, I think maybe we would. Much more sophisticated building, you know, but, you know, milking parlors, all those sort of things are now just, you can do it when you build it. It's not, nothing being screwed, no permit being issued. Not that it's a big deal either way, it would certainly get issued. Isn't that? Just should there be one, right? Maybe we want to think about that, take that up again later.
Definitely think there should be some kind of reason to be looking into what they're actually going to be doing with this structure that they're putting up.
I guess if I was going to float a suggestion now, I'd float it for structures housing that are subject to the siting ordinance for 500 or more animal units, but it could be smaller. That's what came to my mind.
But it could be a shop, could be a big shop, and then he's got fuel in there, he's got changing oil and tractors, he's got doing all kinds of stuff.
Potential, yes. I hadn't thought about that.
Now, Craig, you mentioned passing the siting ordinance. That'll be a separate discussion at some other another time.
I'm thinking, let's think about that. I suspect we're gonna make these changes and bring this document back before we make a final recommendation.
Okay.
So let's consider it. Let's draft, Jason and I'll maybe work on a draft of where we would require permits in
Yep.
A, and see what you think about it next time. So we aren't gonna move it today anyway, I don't think.
Mr. Painter called our attention to the ordinance up in Bayfield County, which was also adopted by Douglas and Ashland counties. Would that be something that would be more geared towards the citing ordinance, or is that something that can be used as a resource for this?
Back when the LSLS committee, this is long enough ago, so my memory is not perfect on it. We did look at that Bayfield County adopted and looked at whether that would be helpful to us or not. Our council didn't think highly of it, to be honest, but because the application that was submitted to Bayfield County is still pending, just like ours. It didn't eliminate anything. They could still show up and try to force it through and see if their ordinance will prevail or not. And so we were trying to not put ourselves into a position of an ordinance that may or may not be successful. We were trying to do what we knew we could certainly do and, and not be challenged and overturned in court. That was a concern we had. That doesn't mean that the pending application we have is woefully inadequate. I don't think we have anything updated at the county level, right?
Yeah, it's
Not a word. I've read through the documents that we received by email, about, they don't need, there's some errors in there. I'd like to talk about the depth of the water table, but yet they have to have a mound for their wastewater on site, which talk about Branson fine sandy loam, which is 24 inches or less to seasonal saturation over most of the property. I mean, there's a lot to argue about there that hasn't even been brought to us yet. So for whatever that's worth. But the point being that we do have, I think, we certainly could look at that and talk about it, but it's a separate, strictly targeting 1,000 animal units or more facility ordinance as a CAFO. I haven't read it for a while, and I don't want to talk about it more right now.
Someone applies for a conditional use permit, their property for a CAFO. They'll be going through all of their building stuff anyway.
What do you mean?
We're talking about the land use permit. Is not required.
So if you apply for, let's just presume, and I won't talk about Cumberland LLC. Let's use Old Dairy Farm in Roosevelt that is just under a CAFO, barely. Have another calf, it might make it. If he chooses to move to a CAFO, then we would have to review all that. But his facilities are already all built. Milking parlors and all that stuff. So we would still go through the land use permit and the citing ordinance to move it to that 1,000 animal unit thing as an expansion. But that would be all we would do with that. So when we're talking about a new facility, though, that would apply for a CAFO and have to build things that weren't there before, would we want a land use permit for the facility and structure? Concentrated animal feeding building. That's all we're talking. And that, right now, they would not be required to get a land use permit for that after the CUP was approved. And if we're talking about it, should we ask for a permit for that structure? That's all.
I'm a little confused about the difference between the land use and
So it's maybe change the term and call it a zoning permit for a second. The land use permit, conditional use permit is for establishing the use, and then the zoning permit is to build the structure. Let's say it that way. So it's a difference between a CUP and a land use permit. small difference. In other words, the permit to build the building is not included now in every other CUP that I can think of. But it's exempted from needing one. Okay. Land use permit, not CUP.
Any other questions from the committee? Clarification? What do we do about it?
I think me and Craig were gonna look at that one and bring back, some language for next time on that item.
If we want to proceed with that.
Yep.
We'll look around and see what other people do a little bit. That's something that I hadn't, as I said, like I hadn't even thought about that. That would be something we should consider until I went through this, because that was not really part of the recommendations of LS and LS. It was targeted at what do we do about animal units and nutrient management, storage and all that. That was what LS focused.
Also has to go to natural resources.
Yes, and the citing ordinance still is in play. Assumed. I think that's all we have on this subject, so I would move we continue this public hearing to our next meeting, look at making some of the changes that we talked about within this, and answering the questions we asked, bring an updated version back.
An appropriate use of the public hearing.
What we did today? I think so. I think the public needs to hear us debate the ordinance. If this was all perfect and we were ready to move it to county board, then we would do that. I don't think we're quite ready yet. I'd like to see definition on the things we'll use on odor offset, references to adjacent state codes and EPA codes. I want to have that on the record before we move it to county board. And I'd like to have the things we wondered about and answered questions and clarified, resolved. We need to strike some things that right now we have in there. I'd like it to be in the final form before we make a decision to move it to county board.
Oh, yeah, I agree, but I was assuming it would be in final form before presenting to the public.
Well, it's too complicated, I think, to make it as ready as we could have. I think the public needed to hear try to understand what we're actually doing. From there.
I second his motion.
Motion by Mr. Conroy, and second.
The next go-around would be a public hearing as well then?
We would just continue this one, yes. This would be a continuation of this one because we took testimony, we debated some things ourselves, and we're going to finish the dotting i's and crossing t's, and then we'll move and vote on it then.
Opportunity for input.
Motion and a second to continue to September. September meeting. The text amendment. Roll call vote. Mr. Pearson.
Yes.
Mr. Payton is excused. Mr. Blumberg.
Yes.
Mr. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Roth.
Yes.
Mr. Conroy.
Yes.
Mr. Bickford. Yes. There's him. Continued until the September meeting. Next, we will go on to number 7, CUP 21-18, Erickson Storage Units. We have discussion.
So last time this was on the agenda for a public hearing last month, and I believe you guys wanted, them to come back with a plan on salvage stuff, I believe?
Yeah.
That's correct. I believe Mark and Bree want to talk or whatever, or
Yeah,
comments? Yep.
Which one will go first?
Whoever's awake. Whoever's awake.
Yeah, I'm just here to continue the discussion, about this again. As far as the vehicles go that we have out back, or had out back, I should say, I contacted our DOT, dealer field investigator. He, inquiring if they have any jurisdiction or whatnot, regarding how many vehicles we can have. He said they don't, of course, mandates regarding how many we can have. What we can do as a dealer is put not inspected for sale stickers in all of them, and they can be there until we get a chance to get to them. However, we're willing to work with you guys. As to the amount, I asked a couple of times last month, and I didn't get any feedback regarding what you guys were thinking. I guess we're kind of at that point again. I guess I'd like to get feedback from you.
I just have a question. There was a perception in my mind that those were just junk.
Mm-hmm.
Are you actually parsing them out?
No, we don't sell them. Sometimes, yes, we do take parts off of them if we have vehicles that we're repairing, but we don't sell them or keep them for parts per se.
I think my concern was that it was something we needed to address and to see try to solve that last couple of questions that pertain to getting this conditional use moved forward. So I was hoping you got some notion of at what point you would try to, reach critical mass, right? And say, okay, got to get these out of here now,
Yeah.
I haven't been back there to look, to be honest, so I don't know how many are back there, but it's just one of the concerns associated with, an unanswered question. So we try to answer.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, there's still, the ones that are left to be picked up, I'm guessing there's 15 to 20 vehicles there right now. I think that there's 2 or 3 that we're keeping back there because they aren't junk. We need them for other vehicles that we have, whether it be for parts or a box or a motor or whatnot. Those will stay back there. And again,
Maria, what do you think the fluctuation is? Like if you have 15 or 20, let's just say, well, what's the most you're likely to have? Before you would say that's too many.
I'm guessing 50. We go by the price per ton for scrap when the scrap's high, I mentioned before. So I guess we didn't necessarily, in our minds, have a limit. We've got, plenty of acreage back there behind that fenced-in area. So I guess we didn't really think about a limit.
So and this is just, I'm not talking about you guys here, but I've seen other people that have done that, and pretty soon they've got 40 acres full of cars and starting to overflow because the price has never reached where they're waiting it again. So I think what we were looking at least me, was that we have some kind of a handle. Okay, we recognize that some of this is necessary as part of the car business.
Right.
Not going to just accidentally grow into something that you don't intend it to be. That's what I was wondering, And, okay, we can generally say we have no plans for it to ever to exceed 50. That might have been good enough for me, That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good estimate. We don't foresee it, we don't plan on it getting out of control. That's, like I had said before, we're proud of what we have there, and it's not going to get out of control. And again, my word is only as good as it is.
I'm just saying that we're trying to not be, it's not you, it's just the land use issue, and so when you start seeing there's a lot of cars there, what's the story on that? That's why I think it's useful to have you guys offer us call it a plan for managing that. That's what I'm getting at. I'll let the other guys carry on.
Well, to me, it seems like this is supervisor off.
it seems like you're essentially a recycling or junkyard. The back there. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's, I guess, I mean, I wouldn't call it a junkyard, it's just, you know, we're storing them back there until we can get rid of them, yeah.
What would our requirements be for that? Probably out of sight or?
Well, I'm sure that we're dealing with actual salvage yards, there's some rules about capturing fluids and things like that, and, you know, accounting for parts and making sure you're not chopping stolen cars, you know, and you aren't doing any of that. I get that, but I think we want to know that you're not, you know, just for the record, if nothing else.
And those are essentially out of sight. How's that zone? Is that zone?
Yeah, it's commercial in the front. You know, not back there though, it's zoned, I think it's RR3, if I remember correctly, but I can look here real quick.
I think
Yeah, it's RR3 in the back.
I think that, you know, as far as us expecting you to clean that up, that's not really how your business operates. I mean, you have cars there for parts. That's part of your business.
I think looking at our suggested things,
This is where they're storing the stuff back here.
if we wanted to allow, if the committee wanted to allow some salvage scrap material green on site, it should be specific. But I think that's probably what we're talking about here.
Yeah, because I'll just show you, and I'm not saying that they're gonna turn into this, but let's look at the one over in Sand Lake. They're counting those. Those are cars. I mean, this is not your operation, I'm just saying, without a number on it, I mean, this is where, this is the guy that's really famous for the Mustang parts, I think, out there. Baxter, maybe?
Baxter.
Yeah.
What's the size of that parcel?
You don't wanna know.
But he's in the business of buying cars from people like Kenny. Put out there too. Parts on everything else.
Yeah. That parcel, that's 10 acres, so that's 10 acres pretty much of solid vehicles. I don't even know, you start to count, you know, there's probably 1,000 there, I would guess, I don't know.
I think coming up with a number like not to exceed 50, would solve that problem. And their intent is that they're there to be removed or potential use of a part, or whatever the remainder it would be removed if took a part off. You aren't selling parts to the public, you're not creating parts inventories or any of that sort of thing.
I think part of the issue too was compliance. Actually taking action on former or previous.
I think they said they took care of their sewer and took care of the signs. Believe Mark is waiting to do the CSM until all this stuff is squared away.
Are you somewhat satisfied?
I think on this property, we're making progress, yeah.
What stands to be corrected yet? I thought we have gotten into compliance with the exception of the violations that will be remedied with the CSM.
Well, I just noticed that there's times I drive by that stuff gets out in the right of way and then it's back off the right of way again. So I don't know if you have employees that are just moving stuff out there that don't understand where stuff should
Yep.
not go
That's
past.
exactly what happens.
But that's your
No,
responsibility as a
Are we
business.
allowed to park something out there for a day and put it back in the shop at night?
It's not your property. Nothing should be in the road right of way.
So it can't be out there during the business hours and then pulled back.
What kind of things are we talking about going into the right of way?
Vehicles. You don't own the property, so.
Got a golf cart sitting out there on the driveway.
We might, yeah, you're right.
Noticed that.
I mean, DOT owns that property. They're diligent on trying to keep stuff out of that right of way and keep stuff from creeping in there. And, you know, it's all about trying to nip stuff in the bud early. Because, you know, if you ignore it and then it goes on, well, you let me do it for 20 years, why, you know, it's just like, why not just, this is what the line is, nothing should be in the state road right of way.
75 feet from center line?
I think in that spot, the right of ways vary all over the place, because they buy site triangles and all sorts of different things.
Almost all the time, the state owns it in fee.
Yep, they no longer do easements anymore, because I think they were having too many problems of stuff being out there. So now they own it in fee, they control it, it's their area.
But as far as being in the right of way, you know where, what it is when it's in and out.
Well, yeah, well, they've had a survey done, so
They know
it's
where it
gonna
is.
tell them where it is. And whether or not the employees know where it is, I mean, that's a management issue, I guess. That's not, shouldn't be me policing everything out there every day.
But the DOT police it.
Yes.
DOT will go through, especially when before they're doing a repaving project or something like that, they go through an inventory, their whole corridor. Do they have people that are driving around looking at that every day? No, I mean, DOT doesn't have staff to monitor 10,000 miles of road that they have in Wisconsin, so.
I've heard of a person who worked in Superior for the DOT, but lived down in this area. Who had something on 7. Just put the signs down.
I mean, I've seen stuff with orange stickers on them in the road right away before, on Highway 70 and stuff. Well, I don't know who's doing that, but.
We've had a discussion. Anyone wish to make a motion on a decision?
What are we voting?
Well, here.
I make a motion that if they cut their, junk cars, should we call it, to 50, clean up the, issue with right-of-way, which it sounds like is just something of understanding. And otherwise, if they've completed all of the other stuff, Jason, you said pretty much they're in compliance. That we approve this conditional use.
Yeah, it's really for the, I'll second it.
Have a motion. Mr. Pearson, second by Mr. Anderson.
Include, most, if not all, of the staff items?
Apparently, they're already taken care of, he said.
Okay, so not a concern then, yeah. So it's 2050.
Only two concerns were the junk cars and
Right-of-way.
right-of-way.
Okay. Yeah.
So, might as well have a roll call vote. Mr. Pearson?
Yes.
Mr. Pat is excused. Mr. Blumberg?
Yes.
Mr. Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Rob?
Yes.
Mr. Conrad?
Yes.
Mr. Bickford? Yes. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you.
Next, listen to Craig again.
Yeah.
Campground workforce update.
The next time, we need more people to step forward for volunteers. So our work group pretty much finished up, not completely done yet, but we could throw out a draft set of recommendations that we will be sharing with the committee. We're not gonna have, we did it Friday, so we did not want to try to have you vote on it today. That would be a little unreasonable and too soon. Gist of it is, we're looking at creating, I'm not gonna put it in opposite order of the recommendations itself, but the conclusion I think we've come to, and Supervisor Rock can jump in anytime he feels like on this, but the conclusion we came to is that large park model type, high density campgrounds are as much a commercial recreational use as a residential recreational use. And we felt that we're always gonna have conflicts with conditional uses. So whether in every district, whether it is or isn't compatible. But if we created a mixed-use district as a floating district that we would rezone to where appropriate, that would make it easier on both this committee and on the applicant, because if you satisfy the requirements of the district, then you have an expectation that you would get an approved conditional use permit. So we're advocating that we create that RCRR district. We've got a draft of it, with permitted and conditional uses. Campground would be a conditional use. Camping would be, anything that's a legal camping unit would be allowed, regulated at the state's pleasure, at how they regulate DATCAP 79. Because we have had testimony and kind of tend to agree that the actual language of 79 pertaining to occupancy and what the state interprets it to be are not the same thing. But we are not going to take on that with a regulatory role. We kind of contacted Washburn County to see if they might be interested in going into the health department inspection business like all of our surrounding counties do. They're not really interested. The Supervisor Hawk can talk about this, but we had looked into this in the past. I didn't think we had the volume of permitting that would pay for it.
Yeah, what Craig is talking about is currently the state is doing inspections. And it's whether we would want to take on the inspection role. And since I don't think we would be able to staff it visually, that's why we're wondering if Washburn would like to go with us.
And it's not, you can't just take campgrounds, you have to take the entire program.
Bars, restaurants.
Hotel, motel, restaurant, whole thing. So we're not recommending doing that.
We already have with Polk County in the health department, already partnering with them. They're the ones that come out and inspect my wells.
Don't they already do their own?
Polk County partners with Polk County for that.
Polk County is an agent of the state, so they have their own inspectors, which I believe then Burnett somehow contracts with them for water testing. There's some weird relationship there, but Burnett County is not an agent of the state. Because your inspectors are state employees that come in and inspect your facility, right?
I federal, state, and then I have the water.
Yep.
And the water is with Polk County.
Yep.
And the restaurant bar is
DATCAP.
DATCAP, and then federal is for the licensing of anything I use to sell, such as my Bloody Mary.
So some of the counties in Wisconsin have taken on DATCAP's role there, and where the county is the agent of the state, and the county employee would do the inspections that DATCAP currently does. But like they said, you gotta take on all of it. You can't just say, oh, we'll inspect campgrounds and ignore everything else. It'd be restaurants, pools, hotels, everything that DATCAP inspects.
The counties surrounding us except Washburn.
And it's under the auspices of DATCAP. It's not, you can make up your own rules. You have to follow the rules as DATCAP says they are. So we didn't see a lot of benefit in that. Then we would recommend limiting, we create the floating district, and if we do go ahead with this, we would offer to rezone all of the campgrounds that would be qualified. And if you think about the ones we've been dealing with, Oak Ridge, Red Lake, Fords, Almonds, all had that mixture of commercial, residential, recreational use with condos and other things divided up. This district would allow for all of that. Would be a minimum 10-acre parcel size to rezone to it. We would talk about it just as we did for ag, that, look, we just granted you guys conditional use permits. We're not gonna make you non-conforming uses. You apply, we will sponsor the rezoning at no charge to you to rezone you to the new district, which is meant for what you do. Take out some of that controversy. We would limit campgrounds to 25 units in A2, RR3, and forestry, and we limit them to mobile camping units only, or rustic, primitive site campgrounds. Limited, smaller, the kind old school camping. We would in ag 2 limit it to in conjunction with other permitted or conditional uses like game farms, orchards, wineries. We have all kinds of things in ag that are related ag uses. We never mention the word recreation in ag though. The purpose of the district doesn't lend itself to things that conflict with the ag use we're trying to encourage. We don't make that limitation on RR1 or on forestry, but in forestry, we also say forestry allows certain conditional uses that are not in conflict with forest. You know, obviously you don't want a great big campground in a fire-prone area out in the middle of the forest someplace. So that, this is what when you get the documents we're gonna send you, you'll see this, read through it, and contemplate it. We're gonna include the sample draft of the district, the recommendations of the committee after we meet and tweak them a little bit from a few comments we have, typo here, typo there. I forgot to mention, when I wrote it, recreational in A2, the type of RVs, got a couple little repairs to do there. We're gonna add, Supervisor Bob's suggestion, a really good one. It's not quite what we were on, but that we should look at the airport district and provide for a special event type of camping, conditional use opportunity for like the air show or similar events. So that may be something beyond that, might draw some more fly-in type people and camp under the wing of their plane with a tarp, but.
Does the Fort for their rendezvous, do they have a special permit for all the people camping?
I think they must, but I don't know that. But
that would be
that's similar,
considered
yeah, it's a similar thing. And the air show, had what, 4,500 people? And might have had more if people could have that opportunity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if we needed to rezone the fort, we could do it. I mean, it's county property.
Yeah, we have to amend our current ordinance, but we could do that.
This is just for day use. This is just for day use camping.
Well, it's a special event, like a rock concert or something else, one-time event.
I know, but he's talking about these special zones that are going to be for rezoning.
Oh.
Those are just for day use then?
No, that's where large campgrounds would be.
That's where the bars and.
Yeah, we would.
That's your seasonal campground basically, or what are your park model seasonal type campground?
Right, because
you're not moving around.
Yeah.
No, recognizing that they're not gonna leave. The same thing as camping cabins don't go and yurts don't go. The way to accommodate that for the primitive sites is in a primitive rustic scenario that's no plumbing, no electric, not a general campground. We could allow by conditional use permits, camping cabin and or yurts. The state says they're the same thing. The state says camping units like camping cabins, park models, yurts are all camping units. We're sticking with that on the RRC district. We're limiting it on the other ones because it's supervisor off. A campground that has 25 camping cabins isn't a campground, it's a motel. So but it's sort of true, right?
Yeah.
It's to try to provide for the mobile camping units to encourage the kind of uses you get with Harvest Host and others, that networks that invite people into small 6, 8, 10 unit campgrounds at the farm, the orchard, the winery, whatever it is, stay for a couple days, buy our product, move on. People pay $100 a year to join that organization, and then they can go anywhere in the country. They're kind of pre-vetted by a member, and I think it could be something we could promote more. And still have a level the playing field a little, or do away with the high, contested type of scenario we're in right now.
Can you just explain, for example, if someone wanted to put in a 100-unit campground and we had this in play, how would that work? How would that work? How do you see it?
Someone would apply for a site, we would look at it, okay, the zoning district you need to rezone to is the recreational, commercial, recreational residential district. So you would apply for rezoning, you go through the process just like we did for Gloria today. The conditional use, comprehensive plan would be considered. The township would have actual say in it. It wouldn't be a recommendation for conditional use, so yes, they would have veto authority. Yes, this might make it harder, but might make it more of a little more advocacy on the part of the applicant for why this will be a good deal. We do the rezoning recommendation to the county board, the whole county board approves it. This is a legislative act, not a ministerial or administrative permit as a CUP. It takes Act 67 right out of it. Now it's up to us and the county board to make the call. But now, what did the applicant gain by that? The applicant gained a kind of a pre-approval of a thumbnail sketch of what he wants to do. Now he comes back to us with a CUP, with a detailed plan, with an expectation that he will get it approved, barring some completely catastrophic aspect to his plan, because we've already went through the process, the town has, the neighbors have been notified, and it's in a district that will allow things besides campgrounds, probably bed and breakfast, convenience store, bar and restaurant, conditional use, just like we do now. It sort of combines light commercial and high-density RR1 conditional uses into a single district, and then lets the already mostly developed RR1 and RR2 remain as they are, and not have these conflicts of whether this is or isn't going to make a difference to the character of the district, that kind of thing. That's the rationale we came to. You're also going to see it every meeting we held for the last 2 months and what it was about, and map of the county with where campgrounds are now and what the zoning districts are, and a digital copy of the final spreadsheet that we got with multiple counties' ordinances and how they interpret it. That was help Center for Land Use Education at Point help prepare that, work us through that, and you'll get to study that as much as you want to.
And what districts would we allow the rezone?
Pardon?
What districts would we allow to rezone?
Well, that would be any, rezone is a change of district. Any district could petition to rezone. It would become the RRRC, or then we'd allow the limited smaller campgrounds to be conditional use permits in the 3 districts I mentioned, RR3, forestry, and A2.
And in a rezone, Act 67 doesn't have the authority that it does in the CUP.
No, if you read this, there's 2 things, but yeah, the Act 67 pertains to CUP, but more importantly, if you read the planning statute, the conditional use permit doesn't need to be consistent with a comprehensive plan. It's inserted into the state statute. But a zoning action shall be consistent with the comprehensive plan. Zoning change is a zoning action, no doubt about that. So that would be the main difference in the process.
You said there was a 25-unit limit?
In RR3, A2, and forestry, but no limit at all in RC, RR, recreational, commercial, recreational, residential.
When you rezone it, Does it matter what the zone was previously?
No, it's not an overlay. It's a rezone to a new district.
So,
And it's what it is. We only have one commercial district. Some other counties have multiple, but 2 counties have this mixed-use, commercial, recreational, residential district. Door County, hotbed of tourism. Vilas County, another hotbed of tourism. And in Vilas County, they're permitted. They even have an additional use permit requirement in that district.
I think it's a good plan.
Anyway, we're not asking for a vote on it today. We're gonna put it out there formally, and we're gonna get it out to you fairly quickly, I think, so have it for the next meeting.
I heard last week that Oakland took a referendum. Bring them, residents, so they want to have any more campground.
Oakland?
I told them, I said, well, I can tell you what the answer is. No.
Yeah, it's, I think right now, I'm gonna speculate here, but I think a big part of the problem was when Act 67 came along and attorneys told applicants that they have to approve this. Created the polarization of everybody saying, no, they don't, and there's all these reasons you guys can deny, all these reasons you have to approve. We've been taking it to battles, trying to make case-by-case decisions, looking at the input. But a lot of this stuff that we were testified to kind of comes to light here, purposes of the district, consistency with the comprehensive plan, all that stuff. If we had that being dealt with earlier in the process, on a request to, okay, we want to do we recognize that a campground like this with a bar and restaurant, whatnot, is just as much commercial as it is residential and recreational. We recognize that and create a district, though, because we don't allow any residential use in commercial, other than the owner having living quarters. So trying to stick them into a commercial district would not be a good idea either. It seemed to us the best solution was create a mixed-use district, because that's what they are. And if you recognize that and want to go forward with that, then that's the recommendation we came to.
New district, rezone would have to be approved by the town.
If it was a non-shoreline area, yeah. What we're doing is we're creating a district without imposing it on anyone until they ask for it. That would be the way to look at it.
Could it be put into the shoreline zone?
Sure, it could be. The reason being that if you want to, after our experience in Sand Lake, right, people can identify a shoreline zone in places that are just a small water body that's permanent, but you might be within 1,000 feet of it. If we said not in the shoreline area, we would be creating another set of problems. So we didn't view it as in or out of shoreline.
But within a shoreline, town would not have any.
No legal authority there. No, you're right. Just like now.
Oh, they can't speak to it, but they can strongly recommend.
Right, and the plan consistency still remains, regardless of shoreline or not.
So really, the ones we had passed was not affecting it.
It would have been, once we've dealt with, where we allowed expansions, would fit this very well. Where we denied, one north of Danbury would have been strictly, would require the rezoning.
That was within the shoreline.
It's not in the shoreline, so.
From Bass Lake.
Pardon?
From Bass Lake, wasn't it?
No.
No, it was farther out.
It was outside the shoreline area. And like some of the forests is probably outside the shoreline, quite a bit of it.
That's why I don't think you want to get into the shoreline, not shoreline, because you can argue that if this swamp mud hole is navigable and then it's shoreline, not shoreline.
Right, I think when you know, Chuck and I know what we've been talking about for 2 months, and we didn't start with this. We came to this conclusion looking at, as after listening to people testify, you know, we spent an hour meeting with the DATCAP guy on what they do and don't enforce, you know, and how what we would have to do. We've looked at a lot of different counties' ordinances and borrowed from several of them in part. That would be the way to put it. So I think for now, that's enough on that one.
Okay. I have a question. Would a town have veto power essentially over, this campground?
The way they would have, well, no, not veto power over a campground per se as a conditional use permit, just like now. It would be advisory. But if you were rezoning to enable the conditional use to be heard, the town has approved the rezoning, they had their kick at the cat at that point. You know what I mean? Because obviously the purpose that you would show for the rezoning process would involve, we want to develop a campground and a bar and grill and a convenience store and some condos and, you know, the whole package for the proposed recreational development could be done to do that zoning district, but it would be recognized that it's a mixed use commercial and recreational residential.
Normally on rezone, they would have the veto power.
There'd be no, but as long as we have a conditional use permit, it's not going to be vetoed. Take the town seriously when they comment, but it's still going to be the way it was.
Move on, number 10, land services, zoning property information.
Oh, right.
I asked a question or two on that last one. That's kind of why I was here for public comment, just to ask. Is the draft ready, or is there any form of that to look at this time, or not really?
The draft is, I think, on the site, is it not? I think it's back from our last meeting.
I think Wanda puts all those documents in the land use folder on the
Can you get there? Yeah, I can get there, but I know I haven't had, some are, the minutes are easy to follow, but the rest of the stuff is not very easy to follow, but I'll have to look at it again.
Is this the one that says draft on there?
Yeah. Let me see what it says.
I know the spreadsheets were hard to look at. And I did have two other comments. One is, you're talking about the inspection, is that for campgrounds, or is that for like VRBOs and stuff like that too?
All of it.
Because the VRBOs, I think, would drive your ability to have somebody on site, because we're on to our fourth or fifth one now that we're having complaints from neighbors that we're going out to sites to police or mark lines and stuff with VRBOs. And so, you know, the campgrounds are one tip, but you don't see the VRBOs because it only affects one neighbor on each side. And I think that's going to be a major concern, and I think that's where you need to go with your I mean, that would pay for your inspector if you had the 300 places that had licenses or had to be reviewed or permitted and so forth. And I think you need to be going there, because we're getting personal call. I got a neighbor on both, two different neighbors called on the same guy, for one on one side, one on the other. And so that, you know, there's a problem. There were 8 cars parked in the parking lot when I went out and looked at it. My guys went out there this last week to do the lines, and there were 9 cars, different cars parked in the same driveway that in the size of this room. I mean, they were touching bumper to bumper, and you couldn't fit any more in there, and they're fighting. They got ropes up on the sides, and it's a mess in some places. So it's just something that will be coming. I don't know if Jason gets complaints on them or not either.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a real prominent problem out there too, on that part of it. So I think that would be, you could find a position just about, I think.
Part of the problem is that some of those folks like that don't have a license. They're just doing it.
Oh, most of them don't. I'm assuming, like Jason said, there was only 12 or under 20 that had them, and there's 300 people that are advertising on the internet right now. So
We used to do a kind of a where's Waldo exercise, and before Jason was involved, Jim and I would get handed, you know, they'd find them online. They tried to be cryptic and not say where they were, but there were enough hints in there about what kind of fish were in the lake or where.
Picture of the cabins, you gotta figure out which one it is.
Hunt them down and find them, but it, you know, it was, we only could do it on the way to or from inspections, right? It's been an ongoing problem, it's not getting better fast.
Okay, so that was the comment. And then my only question on, the zoning district sounds really good, but the problem I have with it, there are none of them that exist right now. And so there's nothing out there, so there isn't a place out there that you can have a campground without that district, and so it all takes a rezone, so that's a real difficult.
That's the good and the bad of it, I admit that too, but I think the fact that we're gonna be, I'm advocating, and I'm sure we'll agree, that we rezone the places who are willing to do it right now, existing, we'll establish that we're gonna do that, and when you have a good location and you go through the additional labor that it's gonna take to get it okay, I think it'll take away that
They're just creating one, so that's basically the comment.
Well, no, I think it'll probably take a while for people to lighten up on the opposition, but right now, there's no guarantee, and we get sued just as easily by approving one as we would denying one right now. We have to fix that, that's my point.
I understand it. And the only question I'd have with Violet County or Door County to see if they had those districts in place before they enacted it, or if it's always been in place, because that's the type of thing that should have been an active resource from day one, 20 years ago.
Probably. Vilas is old, but Door County not so much, in my opinion. Door County is more recent, or at least more progressive, one or the other.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Jason.
All right, let's see here, what are we doing first? Budget approval, item 9. So my budget request is in there. Oh, it's almost noon, you guys probably want to get out of here, so, if you have any questions, it's, there's nothing outrageous in there.
A new truck next year.
In 2023, we'll need a new truck, yeah, but that's,
Okay.
you guys are just looking at 22 right now, so really the only items we've got in here is, software maintenance, that's a pretty standard every year.
So the truck in 2023 is about 30,000 or what?
35,000, I think.
Is that what bumped up field supplies or what?
Field supplies.
31,062. Page 3.
Oh, no, well, you're looking at, reimbursement to other surveyors is what changed that group of items. Right now, we contract with Washburn County and we put in our budget, we figure 60,000 a year, but in 21, my estimated total is only gonna be 30,000 because their surveyor retired in June and we weren't getting any work done for a while, so that's why my estimate is low. Always Barron, I mean, if I said Washburn, apologize. Yeah, Barron County. So that's the same budgeted amount that we did in 21 going forward. Then, a couple of computers for staff in 22, recommended by IT to get upgraded.
That's about a 5-year cycle on,
Yep, we do 5-year replacements on the computers, yep. My budget, I upped my revenue amount from 200,000 to 225 for next year. I mean, right now, we're already over 225,000. We're figuring we'll probably hit 300,000, but we usually try to keep that number, that budget, the revenue line low, obviously, because we don't want to be negative at the end of the year, so.
There's fluctuations, we might be looking at a lot of pent-up desire from last year.
Yep.
But last year wasn't terribly slow, was it?
No, we exceeded our revenue. Last year, we had, 300,000 for revenue, and we only budgeted 200,000.
What you don't want to do is have a county board say, well, you guys can pay for yourself every year, so we're going to take you off the levy.
Yep.
A really terrible idea, I can explain how that happened last year.
Is there anything else?
Things change.
No.
I make a motion to approve the budget budget request.
Motion to approve the budget request.
Second.
Second by Palmer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Typically, we don't budget anything for training. If we need training, we typically, pay for it out of our budget. The line items, every year might fluctuate up or down a little bit, but we don't specifically. Ideally, we would not lose staff and not have to do training all the time, but, perfect world, that would be it.
We might have to, where did Nate go? We might have to talk about salary increase.
Yeah, right. So we're done with the budget, right? I think. So staff reports are in there. Nothing exciting in there as well. What staff's been working on for the last couple of months is in there. Budget reports, again, like I said, we're already exceeded our revenue expectation. Expenses are below since we've had some open positions throughout this year so far. And website statistics are in there as well. Zoning permits, year-to-date, June was the second busiest June ever on record. Prior one was June 2004. I haven't run July's numbers yet, you'll see that next month's report, but, you'll see we got a lot of rezone, a lot of conditional use permits, and then the variances, our Board of Adjustments just been getting swamped with variances. They've already had 24 of them so far this year, so lots of things, keeping lots of people busy.
And they have to redo a couple.
And then we get to redo 8 of them, so that's always fun, so. Paper only noticed it for 1 week.
Oh, really?
Yep. Whoops is right, yep.
Didn't pay them for that week.
No, they said sorry, and they said they won't charge us for that week, so that was awful kind of them. How was that?
Sure, the adjustments, we'll have to.
Oh, yeah, real happy to redo another 8 all over again.
2 days.
Yep, 2 days worth.
Any future agenda items? You're gonna send out your recommendations.
I think you might have, do you have the recommendation?
It was the draft.
Here.
Said draft on the
I think Wanda might have pushed an updated packet out maybe or something, was she saying, or?
The latest package.
Yeah, the latest packet or something might have had them in there, I don't know. But for future agenda items, then we'd have another public hearing for, the large-scale livestock ordinance amendments. We have a couple CUP applications in already. I don't think they're anything controversial. Deadline isn't until Friday for next month's meeting, so we could get some more things in. That's mostly it.
Another. Yeah. Urban district draft. Recommendations, yeah, you have them.
Here, it was on you go on the, paperless, the LUI 2021.
I think it might depend on when you downloaded it, maybe?
Yeah, I'm just downloading another one.
Reduced completed, reduced complete.
That's, I think she pushed out an updated packet.
And then none of us ever downloaded it.
Yeah.
Okay.
She did one packet on the 29th and then one yesterday.
Yesterday was the one, I didn't even notice that. Because I went through this yesterday morning, I'll look at it again after that. Gonna come. Well, we're gonna vote on it today anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, now we have 235 pages.
Oh, that's not very many. Gotta get to 400 before we start talking about number of pages.
Other one, here's 803P. There's another one yesterday at noon.
Oh, didn't even wait. I understand. I like this meeting.
Where was it, Mayor Chuck?
Just, when you whip up your PDF file,
No,
go to paperless, go to land use and info. 2021, first one on there.
I got it. Yeah, I can't find the document. It's gotta be at the very back.
It was right after Erickson's.
Okay.
Oh, because she would have put it in the order that the agenda has it.
Yes.
So she had it right after Erickson was the campground work group update.
I would get this thing to scroll.
Gotta be around page 120, 30, I'm guessing, 40, somewhere in there. No, probably a little higher.
But Erickson's was after the livestock.
Yep. Maybe like page 160-ish, I'll guess.
Okay, I'm on, it's confusing, I'm on the spreadsheet, just pretty big. That'll confuse you. I'm on spreadsheet stuff, yeah.
Starts on page 169 up 230.
What happened, looks like it's a spreadsheet got in there, but it's multiple pages. Converted to this, it didn't reduce. Didn't recognize it. Spreadsheet looks like 172.
I'm on 169 is where mine starts.
Yeah, I found mine too.
Okay, yeah, here.
But I go up here and look, trying to find a page and it didn't show on there.
No, it didn't show up on the top part.
On that.
On the drop down
On the
thing?
drop down thing, it didn't show. It went right to the, from Erickson to yours.
This is, 169 is the floating district, and 170. No, then 171 and 172, 173.
There's no future agenda, is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh,
Yeah, read through that stuff.
I was as you were going, and it looks like what he was talking about.
Yeah, but I never even caught that we had that, we would have had it out.